Welcome to the Essentially Soulful, where we talk about lifestyle, therapy, coaching, and much more. I'm Betty, and today we'll dive into a crucial topic that many professionals often overlook, but one that could make or break their practice. With me is my co-host, DeeAnna Nagel.
Thank you, Betty. I'm really excited to be here and share some critical insights about documentation that could save practitioners from serious headaches down the road.
You know, DeeAnna, you once used an analogy that really stuck with me. You compared practicing without proper documentation to driving a truck full of nitroglycerin down a bumpy road. Could you explain why you chose such a powerful comparison?
Absolutely, Betty. I use that analogy because it perfectly captures the level of risk practitioners take when they operate without proper written agreements. Just like that truck could explode at any moment, a practice without proper documentation is essentially a disaster waiting to happen.
That's quite striking. What's particularly concerning about this situation?
Well, what's alarming is that many practitioners don't realize they're taking this risk. They're doing great work with their clients, but without proper documentation, whether it's a coaching agreement or informed consent, they're completely exposed to legal and professional risks.
Let's break this down for our listeners. Could you explain the fundamental difference between coaching agreements and informed consent documents?
Sure, while they serve similar purposes, they're tailored to their respective fields. An informed consent is primarily used in therapeutic settings, outlining the nature of services, confidentiality limits, and potential risks. A coaching agreement, on the other hand, defines the coaching relationship, expectations, and boundaries, but both are absolutely essential for professional protection.
And I understand there are some specific legal requirements around this.
Yes, that's right. For instance, there's a requirement for mental health practitioners to maintain records in most states, but states vary as to length of time. This isn't just about keeping paperwork. It's about protecting both the practitioner and the client. These documents serve as a clear record of the professional relationship and the agreements made.
You mentioned protection for both practitioner and client. Could you elaborate on how these documents actually serve to protect the client?
Of course. From the client's perspective, these documents provide clarity about what they can expect from the professional relationship. They outline the scope of services, confidentiality limits, fees, and what happens in emergency situations. It's really about transparency and informed decision-making.
I imagine this helps prevent misunderstandings down the line?
Exactly. Think of it as a roadmap for the professional relationship. When everything is clearly documented up front, both parties know exactly what to expect. It's much like having a prenuptial agreement. It might seem unnecessary when everything is going well, but it provides crucial protection when challenges arise.
That's a helpful comparison. Now, you've worked with many practitioners over the years. What are some common mistakes you see people making with their documentation?
The biggest mistake is having no written agreement at all. Some practitioners rely on verbal agreements, thinking their good intentions and professional expertise are enough. Others have documentation, but it's incomplete or outdated. And then there are those who have the proper documents, but don't consistently use them with every client.
Those sound like serious oversights. What would you say to practitioners who think they're too busy to deal with all this paperwork?
I'd say that spending a few minutes on proper documentation is far better than spending months or years dealing with legal issues. It's like wearing a seatbelt. It might seem unnecessary until you really need it. And in today's increasingly litigious society, it's not a matter of if you'll need it, but when.
Let's get practical for a moment. What are the essential elements that need to be included in these agreements?
There are several key components. First, you need clear identification of both parties and the nature of the professional relationship. Then, you need to outline the scope of services, fees, and payment terms. You also need to address confidentiality and its limits, cancellation policies, and emergency procedures. Finally, you need both parties' signatures and the date.
That's quite comprehensive. How do you recommend practitioners introduce these documents to their clients without making it feel overly formal or intimidating?
I always recommend framing it as part of your commitment to professional service. You might say something like, "To ensure we're both clear about our work together, I'd like to go through our agreement. This helps us both understand what to expect and ensures you get the best possible service. It's about presenting it as a tool for clarity and protection, not as a barrier.
And what about updates to these documents? How often should practitioners review and revise their agreements?
Great question. I recommend reviewing your documentation annually at minimum. Laws change, professional standards evolve, and your practice may shift focus. When you make updates, existing clients should sign new agreements. It's also a good opportunity to check in with them about the professional relationship.
What happens if a client refuses to sign? I imagine that puts practitioners in a difficult position.
This is where professional boundaries become crucial. If a client refuses to sign, you need to carefully consider whether continuing the professional relationship is appropriate. Working without proper documentation puts both parties at risk. I always say, if they won't sign, you need to think twice about whether you should work with them.
That's a tough but important boundary. Speaking of challenges, what about virtual practice? Has the increase in online services changed documentation requirements?
Oh, yes. Virtual practice adds another layer of complexity. Your agreements need to address things like technology failures, privacy in virtual sessions, recording policies, and jurisdiction issues. Plus, you need secure methods for electronic signature collection and document storage.
Those are excellent points. Could you share some success stories where proper documentation really made a difference?
I remember a practitioner who had a client dispute about service expectations. Because she had detailed documentation, including signed agreements and session notes, she was able to resolve the situation quickly. Without that documentation, it could have become a lengthy legal battle.
That's a powerful example. For practitioners listening who might be feeling overwhelmed, what's the first step you'd recommend they take?
Start with an audit of your current documentation. Look at what you have, what's missing, and what needs updating. Don't try to fix everything at once. Create a prioritized action plan, beginning with ensuring you have basic agreements in place for all current clients. Then gradually build up your documentation system from there.
That makes it feel more manageable. Are there any resources you'd recommend for practitioners who want to improve their documentation?
Yes, professional associations often provide templates and guidelines, but I strongly recommend having an attorney review your final documents. It's an investment that pays for itself many times over in risk prevention.
DeeAnna, as we begin to wrap up, I'd love to address the cultural aspect of documentation. How can practitioners navigate this with clients from different cultural backgrounds who might have varying expectations about formal agreements?
That's such an important consideration, Betty. Cultural sensitivity is key. Some cultures place more emphasis on verbal agreements and might view extensive documentation as a sign of distrust. I recommend explaining the documentation process as a professional standard rather than a personal requirement, and being prepared to walk through it with extra patience and cultural awareness.
That's helpful. And what about the language used in these documents? I imagine there's a balance between legal thoroughness and client-friendly language.
Exactly. Your documents need to be legally sound, but also understandable. I recommend using clear, straightforward language while maintaining professional terminology where necessary. Consider having your agreements available in multiple languages if you work with diverse populations. And always be ready to explain any terms that might be unclear. And be sure you're considering your scope of practice, regulatory issues regarding your profession, and where issues may overlap. For instance, a licensed therapist who also offers coaching services or other alternative healing modalities.
Looking to the future, do you see any emerging trends in professional documentation that practitioners should be aware of?
Digital transformation is the biggest trend. We're seeing more sophisticated electronic signature platforms, blockchain-based document verification, and AI-assisted documentation management. But remember, technology should serve the core purpose, protecting both practitioner and client while maintaining professional standards.
Before we close, could you share your top 3 pieces of advice for practitioners wanting to improve their documentation practices?
First, start today. Don't wait for a problem to arise before getting your documentation in order. Second, Invest in professional review of your documents. It's worth every penny and demonstrates your due diligence. And third, make documentation a consistent, non-negotiable part of your practice routine.
Those are excellent takeaways. And if there's one thing you want our listeners to remember from our conversation today, what would it be?
Remember that proper documentation isn't just about legal protection. It's about providing the best possible service to your clients. When expectations are clear and boundaries are well defined, you create the foundation for truly transformative professional relationships.
Thank you, DeeAnna. This has been incredibly informative. To our listeners, remember that, like that nitroglycerin truck we talked about at the beginning, your practice needs proper safety measures. Don't wait until it's too late to get your documentation in order.
Thank you, Betty. And for any practitioners feeling overwhelmed, remember that you don't have to perfect everything overnight. Start with the basics and build from there. Your future self will thank you. I'll also include some links to helpful articles in the show notes.